Welcome to Commander Central, episode 162, and today we're going to take a look at listener Jonathan Reyna's Sliver Tribal deck. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Chris, we're talking slivers.
We are.
Are you excited?
Yes.
Does it make you want to build your sliver deck again?
Yes.
Does seeing the price of Sliver Queen make you not want to build your sliver deck again?
No. Have you seen what I paid for modern cards? That's just like, I don't even bat an eye when it's that kind of money.
No fear. I respect that. You just got to lean into the turn sometimes, and it's going to be an expensive card, and that's what it is.
So you just kind of go, oh, yeah, well, good thing I spec'd on all these fetch lands that I can trade in to go for something big like that again.
There you go. So how's everyone's week going?
Pretty good.
Chris,
it's Thanksgiving.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Actually, this will air on Thanksgiving, won't it?
Right?
America Thanksgiving.
There we go. Right.
I screwed this up on our Halloween episode because I should have come on and been like, ooh, Halloween. This time I won't forget.
Well, I believe, though, you have a cliffhanger thing from our previous show,
Yes.
Chris.
So, coming down onto the freeway, doing 65.
Like you're supposed to.
Correct.
Look over, and there's this gal in a car directly alongside of me.
Not paying attention at all.
Will not move. Will not move. Will not move. And I'm like, and she's got cars behind her. I'm like, okay, so I can't really hit my brakes, otherwise this is going to cause something. And I can't floor it because we're almost at the end of the on-ramp. So I'm just like, So I start moving into her. And all of a sudden, I see her car go into the other lane. And I'm just like, come on, pay attention, people.
That's a hard check into the boards, folks.
My heart check I had this week was actually over the weekend. On Friday night, my son was staying over at a friend's house. You guys both know this story because I told you already. My son was staying over at a friend's house for the night, and we went out and played Magic Friday night. And I got home, and my wife was asleep. I got into bed. I got home about midnight, and about 2 in the morning, I am woken up by my son going, Dad! Which normally is, that kind of wakes you up. It's not the best way to wake up, but it's much more terrifying when your son isn't home.
The robots.
Yeah, well, turns out he was home because he had an asthma attack and didn't pack his inhaler. So the father of the kid he was staying with brought him home so he could get his inhaler, and he knew where we had the key hidden under the flower pot in the backyard. That's not where it's hidden, but
I'm going to check this out one day. Next, if you ever invite us over, I'm just going to walk right in the back of your What are you doing? Looking for a flower pot.
or is it hidden there? And I'm trying to throw everyone off. So he got in the house and got his inhaler and was waking us up to tell us he was home. But yeah, that was absolutely terrifying hearing that when your son isn't home, and it turns out he is.
You know, when you were telling us the story, I'm running through my head all these scenarios, and I'm like, okay, well, your kid's not old enough for them to be out doing late night shenanigans all together.
Right, yeah.
I'm like, well, maybe there's an accident. I'm like, no, there wouldn't be an accident. I'm like, and the cops wouldn't be involved. I'm like, why? What's going on? And then when you finally told me, I'm like, okay, that makes much more sense.
Well, and then after that adrenaline rush, I couldn't get back to sleep, so I was awake till 5:30 or so before I fell back asleep. So if you saw me Saturday morning at 3 a.m. on Twitter tweeting out random nonsense, that's because I couldn't fall back asleep.
And usually I'm yelling at those Canadians about tweeting at 2 o'clock in the morning, and my phone's going off, and I roll over and look at it. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. And go back to sleep.
Dana's got it covered.
Well, if you want to find us online, reach out and say, hey, Chris, you're a bad driver, or hey, Dana, you deserve to get woke up at 2 in the morning, how would you do that, Chris?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. Search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. Find us on YouTube, CMDR Central. And find us online at CMDRCentral.com.
And if you would like to get a Decks You Play episode done for yourself, head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central and check out our reward tiers. And we are very thankful for everybody who can support us on Patreon, and it makes the show go a long way, especially when we move to video in a few short weeks.
Yes, indeed. And it is Thanksgiving, so yes, we are very thankful for all our supporters. Just in general, I want to say thank you to everyone out there. We've been doing this for, 2.5 years?
2.5 years.
That's insane. And people still reach out to us, and we just got a message. We have a couple of people that are listening that are going to be in the shop a couple of days after this airs.
Yep.
We'll play some games with. Dan came to see us and did a few shows a week or so ago. It's just, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone's Patreon supporters and just people who listen. This has been an amazing experience, so thank you very much. We have a couple of contests nearing their end, too, I think, as well, Max, don't we?
Yeah, on Patreon, we're giving away a Commander Central t-shirt to 2 lucky winners. So as long as you support us or begin to support us by the end of November, you'll be entered in to win one of those t-shirts. And then on Twitter, we're giving away those enamel pins of the Teamer and Simic symbols.
There you go.
Got it. Got there. It's only like the 8th week we've said this.
I thought you were going to say Abzan. And I'm like,
I did too.
That looks more like the Selesnya over Abzan.
So find that tweet on our profile and just retweet and follow us, and you'll get entered in to win those. It's both pins to one person.
Very good. All right. Should we look at this deck?
Let's do it.
All right. We got a little bit of feedback here from him, I believe, Max?
Yeah, so John's goal is to just do really cool things with slivers every time he plays the deck.
All right.
But some of the weaknesses he has is he's only played the deck a handful of times, and it just kind of grinds to a halt. So he thinks he just needs some improvement in the card draw area of the deck to keep the gas flowing in this aggro type deck. And he knows that slivers just also generate a target on your back the minute you flip that over at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can help out with both of those, especially with Chris on the show, because he is Mr. Sliver over here. And then overall, the budget is between $150 to $200 total for what we can suggest.
Okay. That, I think, is pretty manageable. So just looking at the deck, this is a Sliver Hivelord deck, but, I mean, it's 5 colors. Sliver Queen, there's a couple different options there. Queen's the expensive one. Hivelord is probably the most budget-friendly of the options, I believe. And it's still really, really strong. Which is your favorite, Chris? Do you like Sliver Queen the best?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any particular reason why, or is that just what you've always gone with and it's always value?
She's probably I don't want to say she's the most powerful of them, but she just generates value by herself.
Right.
So if you play her, you don't even need anything else on board. You can just start generating value.
I would tend to agree with that. Just generally speaking, having played against your deck, which was fairly strong, board wipes tend to be a problem. Although Hivelord does get around that a little bit by giving Indestructible.
It does.
Yep.
So bouncing back can be tough, and I agree. I think just in general you want draw because that also helps you recover from a board wipe.
Yep.
I think those are kind of the two main things you want to deal with because slivers your win condition is slivers.
It is.
Not that you couldn't also run a Crater Hoof or something, and that probably would be effective too. But I don't think you need to. You can just win on slivers.
Yes.
So let's take a look at this deck. He's running 37 creatures. They're all slivers. That's pretty deep. Maybe we'll come back to that. And look at his land base first. 37 lands in a 5-color deck. Anything jump out at you here? We won't go over all of them, but I think there's a few of the tap/bounce lands, like Azorius Chancery is the first one. I would avoid as many of the ETB tapped lands as possible, especially in a 5-color deck. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He is running 15 basics, so 3 of each. If the fact that you just need a board presence, I agree. Cut those come into play tapped lands or the bounce lands and play a couple more basics of each color just so you guarantee you are on curve and color as much as possible.
Yeah, I don't know if you want things like Guild Gates. He's not running any, but he does have a few of the ETB make 3-color mana ones like Frontier Bivouac and Jungle Shrine. I don't love those either, but I like them more than the bounce lands.
Yes.
I think you want the bounce lands out of here.
Well, especially if you're playing a deck that has more lands that come into play tapped, because you're going to end up bouncing a tapped land, putting a tapped land into play just to play a tapped land the next turn.
Man, nothing feels worse than like a 2-lander, and you're like, okay, I play a land, and then you realize when you drop that bounce land on turn 2, you're going to be at 8 cards at the discard.
Yep.
Because I've seen that happen to more than one person, and that feels terrible.
I see it at least once a night when I play, and I have to remind the person because they bounce. I'm like, how many cards in your hand? And they come, they're like,
I'm at 8.
Like, yep.
That's, yeah. The first thing I would look at is getting rid of the bounce lands. The second thing is probably the tricolor ETB tapped lands. On his budget, things do get a little tricky. He has some of the budget, he has a command tower in here already. Exotic Orchard is one we've said a lot in the past. Mana Confluence is now no longer one that you can just recklessly toss into a deck because it's $25-ish. But City of Brass is still fairly affordable at, the $5-ish, $6 range, somewhere in there. I would probably run that.
It's 10, but sure.
Is it up to 10 now? Man, all
Because
right.
people can't afford Mana Confluence anymore.
I guess. I guess. If Mana Confluence isn't available to you for your commander deck, you go to with City of Brass. I guess that makes sense.
The event deck one is 10. All the others are 11 or 12.
The other thing you could contemplate are, for a budget sake, and I know they're all going up in price too, are the Pain lands.
Yep.
Yes.
They always come into play untapped.
Yep, and they always create a colorless, which kind of hurts this deck sometimes, but sometimes not.
Yeah, like you can get away with not having to use those.
Yep.
Matter of fact, I think you would be just kind of surprised how often you wind up not needing them, particularly after turn like 4 or 5. Early turns, you're going to ding yourself. If you drop a Pain land on turn 1 or 2, you're going to ding yourself for a couple of life. But like oftentimes by the time turn 5 or 6 rolls around, you're just tapping them for colorless. Like I just doubt, grand scheme of things, very often that makes a huge difference. So the Pain lands for sure are ones on a budget I would look to find room for in these decks.
And it looks like he's missing 3 or 4 of the shocks.
Okay.
I know they're, $10 to $15, and they're probably going to stay that due to Pioneer, but those are where I would probably focus. If you,
I think so.
Buy one a week, buy, a couple every other week, just those are going to help smooth this mana base out where you can take out those bounce lands pretty quickly.
Yeah. And now, usually the advantage of the shocks is they are fetchable, and he isn't running any actual fetch lands in here.
I think that's what might have made my deck so powerful, was I was running all 10 shocks and all 10 fetches.
So you could just go get, and I can say this having played against that deck, I don't remember you ever struggling with colors.
Nope. When 10 of your lands are dedicated to going for a specific land, it's...
But I agree with what you're saying, Max. Like the shocks are, the ability to have them come into play untapped is a really, really big deal a lot of times. So I would look at cleaning up those things in the mana base as well. I hear you.
The other thing I was thinking, on a budget-wise, you do still have Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse.
And they'll get whatever one color you need.
And it might come into play tapped, but it is going to get you a basic to help you color fix.
Ash Barrens is probably a slightly better version of those, because if you draw it in turn 8, Evolving Wilds always does nothing and comes into play tapped if you use it.
Yep.
Ash Barrens you just drop on turn 8 as a colorless source, untapped. So I would run Ash Barrens too, for sure.
And this being tribal, and it being now a pretty cheap card, Path of Ancestry, it comes in tapped, but it's going to, keep your hand full, lets you scry every time you cast a Sliver.
Yeah.
And it's going to make all 5 colors of mana because you're running Sliver Hivelord over something like Morphon.
Yeah. Now, definitely, like, if budget ceased to be an issue, things like Cavern of Souls become fantastic, and you mentioned all the fetch lands. But,
fetch lands, yeah.
But that's not the space we're playing in here.
Even the Horizon lands, put all 6 of those in this deck.
Yeah. Yeah, right, because when you don't need the mana later on, it gives you some of that draw you need. But yeah, the big things I would look to start with maybe the Pain lands and get the bounce lands out and replace them with Pains or worst case basics. I just think those are more trouble than they're worth in a 5-color deck.
Agreed.
Anything else here?
I think we're good.
He doesn't have any land removal lands, but...
That is really hard in 5 colors.
Exactly. So
it's a sacrifice you have to make.
Yep.
Yes, I agree with that. All right. Let's look at enchantments next, because there's one of them.
It's land tax.
It is land tax. What do you guys think of land tax here?
It is a wonderful card.
It's fantastic. Love land tax.
Yep. Not in this deck.
Yeah.
Not in this deck. I agree.
There are better cards that are either going to let you draw cards, so something like Rhystic Study.
Yep.
Or stuff that's going to help you fuel your game, like maybe Cryptolith Rite, so you can tap all those slivers that maybe you don't want to attack with to generate more mana.
Yep. Or what is that, Kindred Discovery, that 5-mana enchantment?
Yes.
The blue one.
Yep. I know that one is way up in price though right now.
But it's less than this land tax is.
Yep. And if this is your only deck that you have, you could look at trading land tax up for it, because I think they're around the same price.
Absolutely. Yeah. Or even for a Sylvan Library or like there's a lot of things. I think, man, I would not run land tax in this deck. I love the card. And I would bet this is one he cracked in a Battle Bond, because he has a Battle Bond version.
Yep.
I would bet it's one he cracked in a Battle Bond pack and put in the deck, because it's a great, great card.
Yep.
It's just not a great card in this particular deck.
And for a first time doing 5-color,
yeah,
it does get you those any basic. So it's not like just plains. You can go get one of whatever you need. Another one that I've always wanted to run in a deck would be Descendant's Path. So.
I want to refresh our minds. That was out of Innistrad, right?
Yeah, it's from Avacyn Restored. It's 2 and a green. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature that shares a creature type with a creature you control, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Otherwise, put that card on the bottom of your library.
So he's got a 1 in 3 chance of casting a Sliver for free, basically.
Yes.
Yep.
In this deck, given how many creatures he's running, I would consider it definitely. One I have down here, and it is $7, so it's not nothing, but I think it is budget, is Steely Resolve. It's an old enchantment for 1 and a green. When it comes into play, you choose a creature type, and creatures you control of that type gain Shroud. You're not really doing very much in this deck that cares about interacting with your slivers, and you keep anyone else from doing that too. I think granted, I think there is a couple of the slivers in here that do give your guys protection, but I think just having one more way to do it, considering how weak how badly the deck gets hit by removal, being able to keep that stuff in play and indestructible is amazing. So that's one I would consider in that slot as well. Anything else from you guys that jumps out? I mean, obviously, Mystic Remora.
Right.
Rhystic
Study's great in here. Phyrexian Arena.
Mirari's Wake. All those basic enchantments that double your mana or do something like that are going to be great in here, but what do you sacrifice for them?
The problem is he's decided he wants to have 30-some slivers in the deck, which I get if you're into sliver, because they all do a different thing, and you're creating weird board states constantly, and I totally get why that's fun. So I get why he's using the slivers for a lot of different things, but I would at least focus on some protection, and like we said, you could do some of his draw stuff here with Rhystic Study or with Mystic Remora, that kind of thing as well. Instants. What do we have here, Chris? 'Cause there's a few more instants than there are enchantments, at least.
See, there's 8 of them. We have Dismantling Blow, Fact or Fiction, Magma Quake, Mortify, Negate, Putrefy, Selesnya Charm, and Teferi's Protection. So the first card I cut is Teferi's Protection because
that's trash. You want that gone.
You don't need to be playing that card. And the only reason I'm saying is because I don't have one and I hate it when it gets played against me.
Oh man, I mean, if you don't counterspell it, the person does something game-winning or near game-winning. Because it's almost always done to dodge something.
The one year I decided not to buy all the Commander products, and this is printed in it.
Yeah, it's a absolute beating, and feel good that this is in his deck, because now we don't have to recommend it sucking up half of his budget.
Yep.
Similar to Teferi's Protection, this is one of those board wipe defenders. I would swap Selesnya Charm for Boros Charm.
Yeah. Selesnya Charm is not a bad card. The modes are one creature gets +2/+2 in trample. You can exile a creature with power 5 or greater, and you can put a 2/2 White Knight token into play. You're never casting it for the White Knight.
Nope.
So you're either giving a creature a minor buff, which you're probably not doing either. So mostly this is going to be exiling a creature with power 5 or greater, which again is pretty narrow. Boros Charm, being able to respond to a board wipe by making your stuff indestructible is pretty solid.
And giving all of your slivers double strike is really nice too.
Yeah.
It's only target creature.
It's one creature.
Ooh.
My one argument against Boros Charm would be the fact that his commander does give indestructible.
True.
But Heroic Convention's also $12 or $13 now.
Yeah.
Which would probably be the first one I would recommend, but again, he's on a budget.
I'd rather see in this slot, because it is on a budget, is either Azorius Charm or Izzet Charm.
Because they draw cards.
Yeah, I can see that as it gives you a backup.
I do believe Azorius Charm gives a lifelink as well.
Yes.
There is a Factor Fiction in here. It's a little bit of draw. So he's got a couple. Let's look at the removal spells here quick. There's Dismantling Blow, there's Mortify, and there's Putrefy. I don't think Dismantling Blow is good enough. It's 3 mana to deal with an artifact or enchantment, and then you can kick it for 3 more to draw 2 cards. It's not bad, but I don't think it's good enough. What do you guys think?
Judging by a lot of Modern Master stuff in here, I wonder if maybe a box was cracked.
I would guess.
Yeah.
If there is, look for Generous Gift. If you have a Generous Gift, that's a straight-up replacement right there.
Deals with any problem, and you don't draw 2 cards off it, but it deals. It just solves your problems.
Dealing with the problem is more important. Sometimes.
I would agree. And for that matter, not that I don't love Mortify and Putrefy are both very solid cards. I would not be running those when if I didn't already have Anguish Unmaking or Beast Within in the deck, really. Because, again, those will both solve any problem. Anguish Unmaking will do it as an exile for the same exact mana cost. Well, at least same CMC.
Anguish Unmaking is going on like $7 or $8.
It's not nothing, you're right.
But D-Spark is 50 cents.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it has a little bit more of a workaround because the permanent has to have a CMC of 4 or higher, but...
Beast Within's a $1 or $2.
Right.
But I would still... You're in 5 colors, and there's quite a few different cards. Even Chaos Warp. I think if you're in 5 colors and you're running a 3 mana removal spell, it should solve every single possible problem. And I think these 3 don't, and you have access to ones that do. What do you think, Chris?
I would cut them all.
And just not run any removal and just go full speed ahead?
There are multiple creatures that have baked removal
True,
in it.
And just run Sliver, just deal with the Slivers that do that.
Yes.
That's not unreasonable.
Because then it opens up slots for more card draw cards, or once we get into sorceries, I have suggestion for mana ramp type cards.
That's not that is totally reasonable. I get that. The Magma Quake.
No.
I mean, I'm sure if you happen to have dropped one of your flying Slivers, because there's a couple ones that give all Slivers flying.
Yep.
That's a good play. It's not consistent enough, I don't think.
It's going to be a dead card 80% of the time in your hand.
And if you want to cast that when your commander's out as a board wipe and have it not hit your stuff, just run a board wipe. That's always going to work.
Run Blasphemous Act.
Yes, exactly. Which, again, is now up to $5-ish or so. But,
the downside to a card like this in Magma Quake is it is an X cost.
Yeah.
And the game plan of this deck is to keep putting creatures on the battlefield to win with overwhelming numbers. So your mana's already tied up doing something else.
One more reason why Blasphemous Act is so good, if your commander's out, you spend 1 mana to kill everyone else's stuff, and your stuff is perfectly fine. That's amazing. That's amazing. So I agree, Mike. My first choice, I think, here would be Blasphemous Act. I would just run that over Magma Quake, full stop. Negate.
No.
It's just one. You just have one counter spell, and I just don't think that's, again... What I might run is another board wipe, actually. Again, because you're going to be resilient to board wipes a lot of times.
Or something that gives a mass effect, like how the Selesnya Charm gives lifelink.
Sure.
So in order to get the mass effect, I think you have to run Jeskai Charm.
Yes.
I think is the one. Something like that that's going to give all your creatures something.
Yeah, that would make sense. Or like sudden, is it Eerie Interlude?
Interlude can blink them all.
As a protection, way to protect them. But, yeah, I think that's where I'd go to. I think negate one counterspell just doesn't cut it.
No, because in my opinion with this deck, and I've played this deck, quite a few times, rebuilt it in different iterations, the deck revolves around the creature base.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas other decks, your creature base is support cast for your other big flashy spells. No, this one you need the creature, so you need everything possible to protect them.
Yep, I would, and I think in this case, in what we're seeing here, you talked about him cracking the Modern Masters box or what have you. We'll note this is someone who plays in our shop, so we know who he is.
Fairly new.
He's a very new player.
This summer.
Yes, and I would dare say this deck doesn't look very different than how I would have built my very first Commander deck.
Agreed.
Because number one, there's probably a bunch of these cards we're talking about that he doesn't even know exists. How would he know this random thing from Odyssey is a card or from Stronghold or whatever? Slivers are easy to look up. You can just search for Slivers on Scryfall. When you're trying to find what cards protect my commander, it's really difficult to find what Steely Resolve is or find what all the charms do unless you want to sit down and read through every single charm.
Yep.
EDH Rec is helpful for those kind of things, but again, Slivers, 5-color Slivers, there's every single card you can run in that deck. There's just so many options.
Yep.
So, I mean, we're going to offer a lot of suggestions here in this particular deck, but that's not a slight on John at all. This is a really difficult thing to do, building 5 colors as a brand new player. Sorceries. I'll throw that one to you, Max.
We have 8 sorceries. We have a Fettle Dredging, Chain Reaction, Cultivate, End Hostilities, Fumigate, Grow from the Ashes, Hive Stirrings, and Rampant Growth.
So we were talking a little bit about board wipes. Chain Reaction is in here. It's a board wipe. And as is Fumigate, as is End Hostilities. So he does have a few more in here.
And I do like it because they are the budget versions. Like if you start going into Wrath of God and Damnation, the prices start going up.
Yep. A Fetto Dredging is just a kind of way to bring a few things back. Return up to 3 target creature cards from your graveyard of your choice to your hand. You have Cultivate, which is ramp. Grow from the Ashes, which is a Dominaria. It is 3 mana with a kicker of 2. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield. If the spell was kicked, search your library for 2 basic cards, put them on the battlefield. Hive Stirrings makes you some slivers at sorcery speed, gives you 2 sliver creature tokens, and Rampant Growth, another ramp spell. So what do we want to talk about here?
I honestly would overload on ramp. Going for lands.
Sure.
You have your Kadama's Reach, Cultivate, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Nature's Lore is a better Rampant Growth, particularly since he's running quite a few shocks.
Farseek's better than Rampant Growth.
For that matter, in this particular deck, because it gives you more options, yeah.
Yep.
So yes, I agree. I would get a few more ramp things in here. The first one outside of that I will mention, a Fetto Dredgeling is a decent enough card. If you want to spend a little bit of money, the card that I think is good to the point of being game-winning in this deck, I think sometimes, would be Patriarch's Bidding.
That's what it is. I couldn't remember the card name.
It's $20 now, but it does what a Fetto Dredging does, but it just brings all your creatures back onto the battlefield.
Right.
The difference between bringing 3 back to your hand and just putting them all into play is huge. Now, everyone can pick a creature type, but I literally, I've seen Patriarch's Bidding cast, I don't even know how many times, and I don't think it's ever been cast fairly. I've never seen the person with the tribal deck go, man, I really want to cast Patriarch's Bidding, but I can't because that player's got more creatures of that type. It can happen absolutely mathematically. You could run up against another tribal deck and they have more stuff in their graveyard and it's a dead card. But 99% of the time, you are the person who's getting an amazing amount of benefit from it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Typically, that card does require setup, but if this is the deck where you just load up on creatures, you're always going to have 5 to 10 slivers in your graveyard.
Right. And the thing I would say about it does require setup sometimes, particularly when you see it in zombie deck.
Right.
But in this case, it's one of those situations where your setup is I'm either winning the game because I'm playing slivers, or I'm not winning because someone's board wiped me, and I will now cast that and I'm winning the game again.
Yeah.
So if you don't need it, it's because you're winning and you don't care. And if you need it, it's going to make you win again. I just think in a sliver deck particularly, it's disgusting. And I've seen Chris cast it, I believe, in his sliver deck, and it was disgusting every time he did it. And it was in one of the situations where someone would board wipe, and you'd think, whew, all right, we can deal with something else right now. And no, you can't, because now there's 20 slivers back into play. So I think that is worth saving your nickels and dimes for and finding room for Patriarch's Bidding.
Maybe
here.
any of them. What's the Wrath that also reanimates everything? I can't think of it off the top of my head. 5 mana in black.
Living Death?
Yeah, that could be another one to contemplate, especially because your creatures are strictly just better than theirs.
Sure, because again, it's kind of the same situation as Patriarch's Bidding. Yeah, it's a dead card in hand sometimes because you're winning. When it's dead, it's because you've got the board under control. And when it's worth casting, it's because someone's board wiped.
And because I think Living Death is more functional because it could turn into just strictly a board wipe. If there's a Rest in Peace out and someone's going ham, you're just I'll just wrath the board with this card.
The only problem I would say with Living Death, particularly in this deck, is because your commander gives your creatures indestructible, it's always going to kill your stuff because it's a sacrifice.
What if I said that we should change the commander for this deck?
Well, all right.
That is my suggestion for creatures.
I think as it stands right now, that would be the one reason I wouldn't run Living Death, was because all your other board wipes that you could potentially run are ones that don't affect you. They just bounce off your creatures, whereas Living Death is one of the ones, Always Dust, Merciless Eviction are the other ones because of either exile or sacrifice that get around your commander's abilities. But yes, if you're talking about changing the commander out, then that does maybe change that a little bit.
I really don't like Hive Stirrings in this deck. I know it makes sliver tokens, but this isn't like a goblin deck where you have 20 of those cards that make X goblin tokens. There's 2, I think, that make one these sliver tokens. Mm-hmm. This is where I'd want to see something like Distant Melodies in here. 3 in a blue,
sure.
draw
Yeah.
cards equal to the number of creatures of the chosen type you control.
If it was an instant, maybe because the ability to surprise somebody, but it's not. It's a sorcery.
Right.
And I think us dropping 2 sorcery speed 1/1s, even if they get buffed into 4/4s or something.
Right. You need something else to support them. This is either a desperation play because you don't have a board presence, or it's 2 more bodies that are getting buffed by a dozen slivers.
If your board state is such as it is that these become threats, then your board state is so big that you don't need these to be threats, I think.
Right.
Is maybe how I would phrase it. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And this is actually a good slot. Drop that and put in some kind of a draw, even if it's just a, chart a course.
Yep.
Draw your 2 cards. You have to pitch one, but like plenty of times it's going to be a 2-mana draw 2. Or, your Knight's Whisper or your Harmonize draw 3 or whatever. Like almost any draw spell I would be tempted to run right there. Yeah, no, that's a good call. Any other ones here?
Do you have one, Chris?
For sorceries?
Yes.
I tried this once, and it was amusing to play it.
Okay.
Oh, no.
It might be fun to try a few times, and I honestly don't think the card's too expensive. I'm looking it up right now. It's not. It's only like a $3 card.
Primal Surge? Is that
Primal Surge.
I bet I have like a playset of them in my bulk box right now.
It's fun. It's wacky, and especially if you don't play a whole lot, you won't
Yes.
get annoyed by the card. So
My experience with Primal Surge, and I would guess you guys will both have the same experience. It's super fun that first 2 times you play it, then you're good.
Yep.
I've done it, and I'm ready to move on. As a new player, I agree with that. Maybe.
Yeah. And Chris makes a very valid point. He doesn't play very often.
Correct.
So it's not going to give you one of those things where you saw it in every game you played in a night. Well, that's fine because you probably aren't going to play for another 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
Yes.
As a new player, I guarantee that's an amazing feeling dropping that Primal Surge and flipping, 14
entire
slivers
deck.
out of there or something. Yeah.
And there's no way to tutor for it in this deck.
Right.
And we aren't going to add a way to tutor for it.
No, that would feel super, super strong. Yeah, I'm on board with that. I can agree. Let's jump and take a look at some artifacts. 9 of them here. There's an Armillary Sphere, which goes and fetches a few land. Chromatic Lantern fixes your colors. A Coat of Arms, a Commander Sphere. A Darksteel Ingot, a Mystic Forge, a Pillar of Origins, also does some fixing. A Soul Ring, and a Dalkin Orrery. What do you guys think?
Coat of Arms needs to be cut. This is a trap card that I've noticed a lot of new players playing. It counts every creature type.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you play this against someone, say they have 7 zombies in play, all those zombies are going to get pumped.
Yeah. Not that Coat of Arms can't be a really good card, but I also feel like new players can get burned with it.
Yep. Beastmaster Ascension, in my opinion, is just better. I know it's not an expensive card because it's been reprinted about 50 times, and it just pumps your guys.
Even Door of Destinies is safer.
Yes.
Than
I mean,
this.
There's Icon of Ancestry right out of M20 that gives all of the chosen type you choose +1/+1 and a way to filter through your deck. Vanquisher's Banner is the same mana cost, does the same thing, lets you draw cards. So Herald's Horn is a few mana cheaper, lets you, get cards into your hand.
But for what this does too, without having this is a win condition, right? You're going to play Coat of Arms, and you're probably going to hope to kill people. If you want to do that, just run Overwhelming Stampede and just kill them too, and not have to worry about someone casting Fog and then using that in the crackback to kill you. Because that's the concern. Even if you treat Coat of Arms as I'm just going to cast it when I'm going to win and that's it, you can still get burned if somebody doesn't die to that attack for whatever reason, and now suddenly all their stuff is buffed for the crackback. Overwhelming Stampede, you just avoid that problem. I cast it, I'm going to kill people. Oh, someone fogged? Well, then I just failed, but I'm not buffing their stuff for the swing back.
Yes, I remember vividly what made me cut this card finally, and that was that 3 mana Changeling.
Oh,
you pay mana, and it turns all your creatures into a Changeling.
Mirror Entity.
Yes. That made me cut it because a player played that right after I played my Coat of Arms, turned everything into Changelings, which they gain the Sliver archetype, and then they just get pumped by everything you have, and then he turned on me, and I was just like, ah!
Well, I ran it in my Talran deck fairly recently, and the first game I played it, I killed somebody, because I cast it, named Drakes, and then swung and killed somebody. The second time I cast it and did the same thing, somebody had a fog, and it was against, I can't remember if it was some kind of a deck that had like a couple angels out, and that was enough to turn those like 4/4 angels into 7/7 angels and kill me on the crackback.
Yep.
And I wound up pulling it for some, not because I was too gun shy, but like 2 weeks later, some new cards came out. I'm like, I need to find a slot for this. I'm like, Coat of Arms has burned me once or twice when I've played it, so that's a good cut, I guess. So yeah, even like us who've been playing a long time, it can absolutely screw you. Mystic Forge.
I don't know why this card is in here because there aren't enough colorless.
I suppose it lets you filter the top card of your library.
Just run a draw spell.
I agree.
Just draw a couple, yeah.
I mean, this is a 5-color deck. You're running a lot of basics. Endless Atlas. 2 mana to draw a card.
I would be hesitant to run that because I don't think you have enough basics. I think it would
True.
burn you. But like, you just run a draw spell.
Yeah.
Just run Light Up a Stage or Night's Whisper or, I don't know, literally anything else. I would say Phyrexian Arena would be better than this in this deck.
Yeah.
Mystic Forge is an okay card.
That's an understatement
Mystic
from
Forge
you.
has been a fantastic card in my Vela deck, but I'm running 40 artifacts. And I still occasionally have situations where, like, 2 turns in a row, I'm
Exiling
I'm binning lands to see another land. And I'm like, well, okay. It's still really good, don't get me wrong. Even without cheating stuff with Divining Top, it's really good. This deck isn't the deck where you run it. So, you know what? I know people, Dan made his case about Phyrexian Arena on the show we did with him. I would still put Arena in that slot. Or something that isn't Mystic Forge that draws you cards.
Agreed.
Any other ones where you guys don't like?
This is going to come a shock to you guys. I would cut Sol Ring.
Yes.
In a 5-color deck, all it does is produce colorless. You don't have enough in this deck there is. But in most of them, you don't have enough of the high colorless costs to have Sol Ring be valuable. It also leads to playing too many cards in a turn. Because you're ramping out with Sol Ring, so I have 2 colorless and 2 lands, and I can play 2 slivers out of my hand. Well, that's 2 cards out of your hand, and you're only drawing 1 card a turn.
I still like Sol Ring, and I would still run it. Because I think it's good enough. Even though you can't cast your commander off it, and there's enough slivers that are only, don't have any colorless mana in the cost. I think there's enough that it's worth it. But I hear what you're saying.
See, this is also a deck that I run up to 40 lands.
Sure.
And
So you're
cutting the Sol Ring, and then you're adding an extra ramp spell, so you're always playing lands.
I would definitely cut Armillary Sphere before I would cut Sol Ring. It's 2 mana to cast, and then 2 to crack to get 2 basic land cards, but they go into your hand. So that's 4 mana. For 4 mana, I'd rather just spend 4 on a Harmonize and draw 3 cards. You're going to hit 1 land anyway, maybe 2 other things. I would rather just draw the cards than put 2 lands into my hand. I think it's a good card in colors that don't have access to literally every card. Like if you're playing mono white or something, but like that's not what this deck is.
Yeah. I think the same can be said that Chris said about Sol Ring for Pillar of Origins. It comes into play, you choose a creature type, and you add a single mana to your mana pool of any color, but you can only spend it on the creature.
I mean, Arcane Signet's going to do the
same thing.
Felwar Stone. You are in a 5-color deck. Every color mana that Felwar Stone provides for you is going to be effective in this deck.
Yes.
Yep.
Might not be exactly the one you want, but like I bet pretty often, 8 out of 10 times you tap Felwar Stone, it's going to give you what you wanted.
Yeah, you're not going to be sitting down across from 3 mono white decks.
Right.
Or is he?
Maybe. Maybe. No, I agree. That's one I would pull too. Again, this is a newer card. I bet he had it in his inventory, and Felwar Stone hasn't been printed in 15 years or something. I guess 9th edition, so 10-ish years.
Commander precons.
That's true. But that's probably one like a lot of players aren't even aware of. But it comes into play untapped. It's 2 mana. I would go there as well.
Do we talk about Vidalcan Ori?
It's fine.
It shouldn't be in this deck.
It's a good enough. I think. As a new player, I don't think he's doing anything. Okay, so we have 2 different arguments here. There's the argument whether or not Vidalcan Ori is worth running in a Sliver deck. That's a different argument than the one that I'm going to make, which is that Vidalcan Ori is a card that a new player should be running in a Sliver deck. I don't think he, as a player, is going to be doing game-winning things with a Vidalcan Ori. Nothing against him.
Okay.
I just don't think a person who's been playing 6 months is probably doing crazy backbreaking plays with a Vidalcan Ori, because you can. I've seen people that have access to Flash do really crazy things in games. I would bet a new player probably isn't doing that. So it's kind of like an advanced card, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, when you speak of it that way, it makes sense. It's a way to, I can flash my commander in and save my 3 dudes or something.
Sure.
But yes, the argument for a new player, yes, this is an advanced card, maybe not a hyper difficult card, but it's a fun card, kind of like Primal Surge would be.
Like myself, I run Vidalcan Ori in my Glissa deck, and I don't know if I do enough stuff to justify it in that deck. And that's a deck where everything has Death Touch, where I can flash things in as blockers. And I don't know if I'm taking enough advantage of it to justify it. I would just bet he definitely isn't. And I don't mean that like negatively. It's just the reality is Commander's very, very complicated. Slivers are very, very complicated. And he's a relatively new player, and I would just bet he's not getting the use out of this that he would get out of, for example, Patriarch's Bidding, which he could like probably trade this for 1 and some other stuff and have Patriarch's Bidding almost every time he cast it do something crazy. So that's my thought there. Darksteel Ingot?
I'd rather Arcane Signet.
Yeah.
1 mana cheaper, does the same thing.
Isn't
It's not
indestructible, but I mean, the amount of time, I would say the amount of times the indestructible matters is less than the amount of times 2 mana matters.
Can still do Glamour
two
if it's
versus one.
indestructible.
That's true. Still Return to Dust, still Crush Contraband. I would love to see the math on what percentage of remove artifact spells get cast are Destroy versus Exile Tuck. I can't speak for everywhere, but I would say more often than not, when someone removes an artifact or enchantment that I have in play, it's either getting put into my library via Chaos Warp or Deglamour, or it's getting exiled with Return to Dust or something along those lines. So I think Indestructible seems like it's really useful. I think it's less useful than you think. Yeah,
I do understand why it's in there because of the 5-color fixing.
Yeah.
But I think that there's other things that you could run that add additional value. For example, that new mana rock whose name escapes me that gives your creatures +1/+0 of a creature type. Heraldic Banner. And it's a mana rock, and it gives your creatures +1/+0. I think, naming Slivers and turning that 8 damage or whatever, like giving an extra 8 damage for those Slivers as they swing in is going to make a difference more than Indestructible will. So there's multiple things I would run before I would run Darksteel Ingot, I think. Anything else here before we jump over to the creatures?
Let's rock and roll.
There's a bunch of them in this deck.
There are 36 total, 37 counting Sliver Hivelord.
So that's more than I would run in my creature decks, but I get why he's running them. What do you guys think? Would you change that radically, or would you just, what would you do there?
I would evaluate the slivers you are running and try to find better ones.
Okay.
Like, for example, he's running Bladeback Sliver from Modern Horizons. It's 1 in a red, but it has Hellbent. So as long as you have no cards in hand, Sliver creatures you control have tap. This creature deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker.
Which isn't even that good, and you don't want to be Hellbent.
Right, because you want to be attacking. You don't want to be pinging stuff.
There's a few of those that you definitely could pull out and replace with other things. What's the Aura Shard Sliver for one? Harmonic Sliver.
And that is in the deck.
Oh, it is. I missed it. Yep, there we go.
That's the first one I look for
I think I was looking for Aura Shard Sliver. I think I was looking for like Sharding Sliver or something, so I didn't see it. Max, what you could probably do to help him out here is provide him with one of your sweet promo Magentic Slivers.
I could.
Because he's running Magentic Sliver, but it's not the cool promo that you have.
It's not the cool promo that I have 112 copies of.
So what individual slivers, Chris, did you like best in your deck?
Crystalline Sliver, Diffusion Sliver, Dormant Sliver, and then when I was playing the combo version, Basalt Sliver.
Okay. And none of those are in here.
The one that really shocks me the most and a lot of people don't realize it exists, is Dormant Sliver. It is a 4-mana 2/2, and it has all slivers have a defender.
Which seems bad.
Yeah, but whenever a sliver comes into play, draw a card.
Oh, wow.
But you need to have a way to get rid of it.
Yes, which all slivers have sack outlets built into them.
Yes.
You have Darkheart Sliver, which is green and black. Just sack. All slivers have just sack this creature, gain 3 life.
Yep. In addition, you can run, a high market or throw a few sack lands in there. Again, I would say that's probably not something he's ready to do with his deck yet.
No.
When he's been playing it for 2 years, that's a kind of upgrade I think maybe you make. I would guess that's probably a little bit more complicated than he wants. I do like seeing Gemhide in here because it does do some fixing right there on a sliver.
As does Mana Weft.
And it's Mana Weft as well. Mana Weft is not in here though. So Gemhide's in here, Mana Weft is not. That would be one I would look to upgrade maybe into that Bladeback Sliver slot. Because I think Mana Weft is also 2 mana.
Yes. They're identical.
Yep. Max, you mentioned this one before. It is a changeling. I think you could do way worse than running. What is a white changeling we just talked about a minute ago?
Mirror Entity.
Mirror Entity. Because it's not going to buff your other slivers, but it's going to also get their abilities.
Yes.
And it gives you a win condition on the card. Make all your guys into a 9/9 or something.
Yep. And then all the other abilities stack on top of them.
Right, yeah. So that's one I would probably consider here. Like, I don't think you want to run a bunch of changelings because slivers are so good, but that's one I would consider. Even what's the black changeling, or excuse me, the green changeling that has pro black.
Chameleon Colossus.
Chameleon Colossus is also really, really good. And it definitely is better than a couple of these slivers in here that I think aren't nearly as good. So I do like there are a few of the good new modern master ones, and here's Cloud Sliver. Slivers you control flying and haste for 2 mana. That's madness, and that's in here. I'm glad he has a few of those in here.
He's running the first sliver in the deck.
Yes.
I think this is interesting. I think when I originally talked to him about building this deck, he's like, I pulled a first sliver, and I also have a Sliver Hivelord. And I think I probably was like, well, the first sliver currently, because this was right after Modern Horizons came out, is going to draw you more hate than Hivelord at the time.
Because there's also that Cascade, food chain, I think, deck that is CEDH level that plays with it.
And, everybody's like, oh, with slivers coming back in Modern Horizons, we're going to see like an uptick in sliver decks in our shop.
But
so maybe don't be that person.
Sure.
But I think at this point, you could swap the two.
You definitely could do it just as like a guest star thing, like if you wanted to just try it out, because it doesn't require you to change the deck really at all.
And first sliver gets Hivelord.
Yeah, right. Are those the only 2 of the 5-color ones in here? I guess Morphon, technically, kind of, but...
Yes.
So, is that what you're talking about, Chris? Would you, which commander would you swap out?
I would play it as the first sliver.
Okay.
Strictly even just going off his notes, he wants to play something new, weird every game.
Yep.
That would do
and
it.
that causes it right then and there.
Yeah.
I am going to correct myself. First sliver won't get Hivelord because it has to cost less.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
so
you're right.
Before the internet gets to yell at me, I corrected myself.
There you go. At least you didn't pronounce it Necropotence.
That'd be a good card in this deck.
The thing with the first sliver is, even if you're in that board state or that time of game where you have no cards in hand, nothing going on, you cast it and it just starts incrementally giving you advantage.
You get some gas, yeah. There's also the Sliver Legion, the Judge Foil that just came out. Is that correct?
Yes, and I do believe last time I checked, it's still expensive, but I still think it's around the $50 or $60 mark compared to the Future Sight, which is not. It is much more expensive.
One thing about a Sliver deck, if you want to have a deck that you are planning on keeping around for a lot of years, there's always work to be done. Like, you can always look to, hey, I'm going to pick up a couple fetch lands, or I'm going to pick up the expensive 5-color Sliver. Like, there's always, if you want to slowly have that kind of deck that you are going to gradually tweak over the course of a lot of years.
Yep.
I mean, it's a perfect deck to do that because there's always stuff you can pick up for it slowly but surely.
Now, if you ever want to annoy players that you play with, you can get a 5-color sliver called Sliver Overlord and run them as your general.
Yep.
My tip for you is also pick up the card called Amoeboid Changeling.
That's also a sliver, Chris.
Yes.
What ability does it? Does it have an ability or something on the card?
Yes, it can turn any creature into a changeling.
Wait a minute. But what is the sliver? Overlord do?
He lets you tutor your library for a Sliver card, or take control of a Sliver card.
And using that changeling, you can do what?
Turn it into a changeling.
So you can just take a hold of anyone's changelings that's also a Sliver.
It's quite amusing.
Yeah, that happened to me against Sliver deck on more than one occasion.
You scumbag.
And then I changed it after that because that started getting a little old for me.
But that's one of those ones that, like,
Yes.
if the first time you do that, it's a lot of fun to do.
Yep.
And no one sees it coming unless you've, played against the deck before. Yeah. What do you guys think? Any final thoughts here?
Slivers are fun to play. They're fun to play against.
A lot of fun to play.
He's recognized the biggest thing, that you're going to be the target.
Yep.
Pretty much out of the gate. So I think Chris nailed it right on the head earlier. You have to be faster than everybody. You can't take time to stall out. You just, so making the flip to the first Sliver is probably going to help that a lot. And adding some draw that we've recommended will help a lot. And just smoothing the mana base out should help this deck immensely with, the budget we got to work with.
Now, I would say this, though. Granted, our shop is fairly large, and we have a meta where most people have multiple decks. People also, at some point, will recognize fairly quickly that, yes, he's playing Slivers, but he's also not playing like some fast combo version of that deck. You might get a little bit of hate if you sit down a Sliver deck at Command Fest or playing in the command zone at a GP or something. People might focus you. He's not doing that. He's playing in his local shop for the most part. And I do think you have a little bit more room to breathe there, where the people are going to be like, oh, I know who John is. I know what his deck is like. I'm not going to I don't have to go guns a-blazing at him against this deck because there is some breathing room. So, but in general, you're absolutely correct, Max. You will get a bullseye pin on your head with a Sliver deck.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. No, it hasn't scared you away from wanting to rebuild it, has it, Chris?
Nope. Because I'm going to pull it out straight up, full combo version, and just start killing people on turn 5 again.
I think Chris has just been showing us these last few years.
Yes.
Yeah, I sold this card. The deck is still 100% complete in his house, just waiting for the day. He's just been like, la-di-da-da-da, and he's going to put in the same sleeves Mogus is in, so we think it's Mogus, and he'll flip it over and be like, let's win!
Chris cracks me up with this. He goes back and forth and, I'm just going to play some fun, goofy, build some mill like this. He's like, you know what? I'm going hard. And next thing he'll be like, yeah, I thought about it. I'm going to build this silly thing. Depends on how you did Modern that week, I think.
Yep. Depends on if I need to get my rage out.
Your spike on.
Or if someone tried to knock you off the road when you're getting onto the freeway, I think is what the deciding factor is.
I just need to unban Leovold for me, because there's a million ways I could build that deck and then just be different every week.
No.
Then I can just build it every which way and then just bring Leovold with me and open up my bag and be like, okay, which version am I going to play?
Oh, poor Leovold. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Everyone out there, enjoy your Turkey Day. At least everyone in the States, enjoy your Turkey Day. Have plenty of mashed potatoes and bird for all of us, because we'll be enjoying ours today for sure.
So what do Canadians celebrate? Do they do something different?
Canadian Thanksgiving, there's Canadian Thanksgiving, but it's in
October.
It's really? Earlier in the year, yeah. And they have moose instead of turkey up there, I think is what they eat. Or caribou, maybe. One of the two.
Ooh.
Delicious.
Go ask Rocky and Bullwinkle.
There we go.
We should. I'll send him a message right now.
Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty with Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show is edited by Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. You can find me on the Twitter birds at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We'll be back on Monday. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.